It is time for the mailbag video. Took questions from the comment section this week. I got some here to answer for you folks, so that's what this bad boy is all about. Again, throughout the week, continue to comment on the videos. I will pick up some questions and throw it on the video for today's video. And I'll continue to do that every single week. So continue to comment, get your questions answered. Let's get started. Before we get started with this mailbag video, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button. It does help out, and that's what it's all about, is continuing to grow, and grow. So without further ado, let's start with this bad boy right now. The first question I got was, should the Detroit Lions trade for Brian Burns? Talked about this sometimes, quite a bit this offseason because, well, Brian Burns has been a target for trade for the last couple years from multiple teams, and obviously he's a young pass rusher, and the Lions need that. He's a free agent, but I think everybody expects him to get franchise tagged. Why? Because they've yet to trade him, so it would seem extremely unlikely that they would just let him walk in free agency. And so, look, you're going to have to. It would be a tag and trade. For me, look, when it comes to Brian Burns, I like him a lot, but you'd probably have to give up the 29th pick in the draft and something else to get Brian Burns. I don't think that's something I'm willing to do right now because I know that Brad Holmes is really good with these draft picks and he can get good players throughout the NFL draft, one being an edge rusher somewhere. And look, Brian Burns, if you trade for him, you're going to have to give up the picks, but then you have to give him a contract extension. He's probably going to want like a 5-year deal. That's going to make it really difficult for paying other players like Lee McNeil, Jared Goff, etc. It would make it extremely difficult because you have to give this guy the money, and I just don't know if that's something that the Lions are willing to do. Why not just get younger in the draft? If everything fails, you don't get draft, you don't do free agency, all of that, there's no more choice. I'd think about it at that point for sure, but right now, no. There's free agency and there's the draft. There's no need right now to do that, in my opinion, to get a Brian Burns. So I would say no right now. But, hey, in the comment section, would you trade for Brian Burns? Why for yes and for no? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Next question here. Should the Lions sign Chris Jones, free agency defensive tackle from the Kansas City Chiefs? We talked about him as well. I would love to have Chris Jones, but he's gonna command a boatload of money, And it's the same thing with Brian Burns, except for he is going to be a free agent. I don't think that the Lions are going to go that route. You can get defensive tackle in the draft, which is a really good draft for DT. It really is. There's a lot of depth there. And you can get a guy in the second or third round who you're not going to have to pay a gigantic contract to. But look, if they got Chris Jones, I would be for it. I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't. Do I think they get him? No, I don't believe they do. I think that will be a little bit out of their price range because we're talking about 30-some plus probably. And that's just a lot of money. Even though him and Lee McNeil would be dynamic duo. Oh my goodness. Him, Lee McNeil, then you got Aiden Hutchinson. Holy crap, that would be really good. Oh man, it's very enticing. I don't think they go that route though. Would I do it? I'd consider it. Will they do it? I do not believe they're actually going to make a move and to sign Chris Jones to free agency. Just too much money when you got to pay other people going forward. And they're generally, 1, 2, 3-year deals at the most. He's going to probably want a 5-year deal. He'll have opportunity elsewhere for other teams. He's going to be coveted, and he'll have a better opportunity somewhere else. But I would love it. I just don't see it happening. Good question. Mike, will Brad Holmes make a big free agent splash, or big splash in free agency? What do you mean by big splash? I think they could get a player of the Danielle Hunter, a Fuller, a player of that caliber. I guess it's a big fish, but it's not the biggest of fishes. So I think they'll do one move like that, maybe a 3-year deal for Danielle Hunter, and then they'll kind of just go ahead and supplement. Which is exactly what you want. That's what I want them to do. I don't want them to go in free agency and just go crazy, go ham, because if you make a bad deal on a player, you got to deal with that contract for multiple years, i.e. Trey Flowers. So I think they'll go with the 3-year deal with a player of Danielle Hunter, then kind of supplement it. That's what I'm thinking here. They could get a corner and then supplement it. But I could see a situation where you get a player that's a big fish, but not the biggest of fishes, if you get what I'm saying here. And I wouldn't expect a lot of moves like this. Maybe just one, and then re-signing your own guys and free agents to compete for a roster spot that we've seen. Maybe they do a flyer on a 1-year deal to an Emmanuel Mosley. Yeah, he didn't pan out this past year, but a veteran minimum or something like that. They can do moves like that. What do you guys think? Do you think they're going to make a big move in free agency? Do you think they go for a big fish? If you do, hey, let's start the conversation. I'd like one move. That's pretty much it. And then, because we are, in my opinion, about 2 starters away from defense, starters, not just depth, but starters, from being a really good defense, in my opinion, edge and corner. So if they can get that here in free agency in the draft, we're talking starters, that'd be great. And obviously they're going to get depth players too. Depth is really important due to injury, so let's not discount depth. But if they could get 1 or 2 starters, that would be really good, at least from the defense perspective. So they could. But let me know your thoughts. Will CJ Gardner-Johnson return to the Lions? I would like him to return to the Lions. I don't think he's going to return to the Lions. He's going to have better opportunities to start for another team. That's where it's going to be at, right? Is he's going to want a starting role. And when we have a team like a Futu Melifonwu, Brian Branch, and Kirby Joseph, it's quite difficult because we have a lot of talent at the safety position. We do. And so CJ Gardner-Johnson, it makes it a little difficult to bring him back. I'm sure there's individuals in the franchise that don't like the way that he acts, i.e. really cocky. I don't mind it at all. I actually like that. I like somebody with a little bit of mouth who will talk the garbage, but that's just me. Some other people may not like it. They may not think it's something that's going to be tolerated for a long-term deal. But him and Aaron Glenn are tight. That's where he came from. I would try to see if he would come back on a 1-year prove-it deal. I would just try to run it back because we only got a handful of games with him. So he didn't really get cooking here in Detroit, and I'd like to see him get cooking. I'd like to see him be able to do a whole season. I just don't believe they're going to go that route because of the depth, mainly because of Futu Melifonwu. Let's keep it 100. This guy just came out of nowhere. Now, will Iffy be like this the whole year, like he was the last 5 or 6 games for the Lions? We don't know. We don't know that. It could have been a fluke. But I don't really think it was. I think that's really his strong point is rushing the passer, and he's a big physical guy. I loved him coming out of the draft. He was one of my favorite picks a couple years ago. And this is kind of what you expect. I didn't think he'd be this good, but you expect him to be pretty good. You know, I mean, we're keeping at cornerback, but now at safety, he's balling. So that makes a CJ Gardner-Johnson expendable, is when you have an Ifutu Melifonwu. So I'm going to say no, he doesn't come back. Next question here. Who aligns target in the NFL draft? Names? Oh, my God. It's really difficult to say what type of player they target here, specifically names, because we're talking about late first, late second. That gets quite difficult to target. I do believe they're going to go best player available. If they can get best player available in position of need, that would be the route to go. So cornerback, DT, guard, edge. I couldn't tell you what name. It's so difficult. I could see a situation that maybe they want to trade up for Jared Verse or Kool-Aid McKinsley. If he's available, they go other corner. They could trade up, trade down. It's so hard to do mock drafts for Brad Holmes. It's the hardest I've ever since he's been here, and it's quite difficult to tell you who they target, specific names, but that's the positions they're going to go for, in my opinion. look, if there is a position that's not need, but it's the BPA, a player just somehow fell, and maybe it's a tackle or another position that we're pretty decent at, they still may take it because they're not going to play around and pass on talent. Let's just hope that position of need and best player available merge as one, i.e., we need a cornerback, but the best player on the board is a cornerback, so the Lions kill two stones with one bird right there. So let's just hope that happens. Names, it's quite difficult. Should the Lions draft an offensive weapons for Jared Goff? Whew. I personally don't want him to go offensive weapons. I got to keep it 100. That's my personal belief. I don't think we really need to get tight end, wide receiver, running back. I don't believe we really need that. But again, if a player falls, they're not going to pass on it. I would say low probability, at least in the first half of the draft. Now, if you're talking about offense, guard, or tackle is on the table because we don't know the future of some of our players. So I would definitely not discount offensive line. A guard is a need, honestly, and they could take that anywhere in the draft. But you're talking about offensive weapon like running back, wide receiver. I really don't think we need a need there. Now, look, if they don't bring back Josh Reynolds, maybe they take a wide receiver round 3, something like that. That's possible. But, man, it would be difficult because if you get a guy, he's not going to get targeted that much when you can get somebody of a defensive player who is going to be on the field a lot. So that's the difference here when it comes to this. But I trust Brad Holmes and whatever decision he decides to make. If he says, yeah, we're just going to take this BPA and it is offensive weapon, I'll bite the tongue and I'll go with it because he knows what he's doing. And I trust Brad Holmes more than I trust myself or anybody else at this point. So I'll go with it, but I hope not. With that said, folks, keep commenting and we'll do it again next week. Adios.